Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐥 Sharma.
Hi, my name is Krishnan. Today I'll be doing the Hindi news analysis. These are the 5 articles that we've taken up for discussion, and towards the end we'll see previous year questions. So the first article for the day is about Aditya L1, and ISRO is going to launch on September 2 and it will study the sun. So let us see what is this about. So what the ISRO said. So Aditya L1 will be a space-based observatory. And what is observatory? It will be stationed there and it will keep observing the sun. So that is observatory. So it will not be a satellite or things like that. It will be an observatory. So it will study the sun. So when it is going to be launched, it will be launched on September 2. So what is very special about Aditya L1? It is the first space-based Indian observatory to study the sun. So the other countries have done this, but first time India is going to study the sun. So what has ISRO told? It has told the spacecraft will be placed in a hollow orbit around the Lagrange point L1. So what is Lagrange point? We'll see it, but there are 5 Lagrange points and India has chosen L1. Why India has chosen L1? That also we'll see. So where is this Lagrange point 1, L1? This is 1.5 million kilometer away from the Earth. So since it is 1.5 million kilometer away from the Earth, it is expected to take more than 120 days for the spacecraft to reach L1. So why will it be placed in L1? Because when a satellite is placed in the L1, it will have major advantage. What is that major advantage? It can keep viewing the sun without any eclipses. So there will be no disturbance. So continuously it can keep seeing the sun. No, and one more thing is like the gravitational pull and everything is perfect at that place. So the satellite also can sit perfectly at L1. So what will this give? This and all, like it will provide great advantage for observing the solar activities and what is happening on and its effects on space weather. All these things it will be able to see. Now let's see what this Aditya L1 will have. It will carry 7 payloads. And what these payloads will do, they'll observe the photosphere, chromosphere. These are all parts of the sun. So they'll see photosphere, they'll see chromosphere, and what is the outermost layer of the sun? The corona. So how they'll study all these things? Obviously, the observatory, the Aditya will have electromagnetic things like and magnetic field detectors. All these things it will have. Using this, it will study. Next, what they are telling, using the special vantage point L1. So why is it special? I told you there will not be any eclipses. So what will happen? There are 7 payloads. 4 payloads will directly keep viewing the sun, and remaining 3 payloads, what they'll do, they'll carry out in situ studies of particles and fields at the L1. So all these 7 put together, what they'll do, they'll give the information about solar dynamics in the interplanetary medium. So the Aditya's L1 payloads are expected to provide crucial information for understanding the phenomenon of coronal heating. So what is coronal heating? We saw, right? The sun is like this and there are chromosphere, photosphere like this. This outer layer is corona. So what will Aditya L1 do? It will study coronal, in this part, coronal heating, coronal mass ejection, pre-flare and flare activities, everything L1 will study. So there are 7 payloads. So let us see what are those payloads are. First one is visible emission line coronagraph, solar ultraviolet imaging telescope, solar lower energy X-ray spectrometer, high energy L1 orbiting X-ray spectrometer, Aditya solar wind particle experiment, plasma analyzer package for Aditya, and advanced triaxial high resolution digital magnetometers. So these are the 7 payloads that will be part of the Aditya L1 mission. So now let us see all these basic things. So what is Aditya L1? It is the first Indian space mission to observe the sun and the solar corona. What is the objective? they are going to study the solar upper atmosphere, that is chromosphere and corona. So if they study that, what will happen? They'll understand the physics of the solar corona and how it is getting heated. Those things they'll get to know. So where they're going to launch, that we saw L1 orbit. So what is L1 orbit? It is the first Lagrangian point of the Sun-Earth system. So why L1? Why they choose L1? That you know. So what are the payloads? They have 7 payloads, and primary payload is visible emission line coronagraph. So we'll see a bit about this visible emission line coronagraph. So it will be carried by Aditya L1, and it is designed and fabricated by Indian Institute of Astrophysics, Bengaluru. So what is the purpose? It is an internally occulted solar coronagraph. So the solar coronagraph, what it will do? Simultaneously, it will do imaging, spectroscopy and spectropolarimetry. So all these things it will do. That is the purpose of this coronagraph. So what is very significant about this? It is no other solar coronagraph in the space has the ability to image the solar corona as close to the solar disk as VELC can. So that is the significance of it. So how close can it get? The image can get as close as 1.05 times of the solar radius. So it can get that close. It can also do imaging, spectroscopy, polarimetry, and at the same time it can take observations at very high resolution, and the details can be very minute and nuanced, and it can take many photos in a second. So all these things are significant about VELC. Now let us move on to the next article. This article is about Article 35A, and the Chief Justice has passed some comments about it. Now let's see what is he talking about. So what is the Chief Justice of India telling? He's telling Article 35A. So what is this Article 35A? This article empowered the Jammu and Kashmir legislature to define who the permanent residents of Jammu and Kashmir are. So but at the same time, what is telling? It is telling it defined who permanent it defines who permanent residents are, and it provided them special privileges. It gave special privileges to the permanent residents of Jammu Kashmir. But at the same time, what it do? It denied fundamental rights to others. So he's making the right observation. So he's telling Article 35A gave special rights and privileges to permanent residents and virtually took away the rights for non-residents. So what are the rights he's talking about? Right to equal opportunity of state employment, right to acquire property, and right to settle in Jammu and Kashmir. All these things the Article 35A took away. So who are these permanent residents? Permanent residents means people who were hereditary state subject as in 1927. So in 1927, who were the subjects of the Raja of Kashmir? They became permanent residents. So after 1947, if anybody had went and settled there, they wouldn't have been called permanent residents. So how did this came about? Article 35A was introduced through the Constitution, Application to Jammu Kashmir Order 1952. This was issued by the President under Article 370. So in that, what they said some people here are permanent residents. So they will only have exclusive right to purchase land. They can only get government employment, and they can only get benefits in education and healthcare. And so people who are not permanent residents, they were called non-permanent residents, and they did not get all these privileges. So this was going on in Kashmir till 2019. So Chief Justice is telling Article 35A was like that. Even it had immunity from judicial review. So it had violated a lot of articles or a lot of fundamental rights. But nobody can go to the court saying fundamental rights are violated because it had granted immunity from judicial review. So he's telling this artificially created a class of permanent resident and non-permanent residents, and it alienated people. Others felt they were not part of Jammu and Kashmir because they were not permanent residents. And further, what Article 35 is telling, any law which provides for these privileges to this class would not violate fundamental rights like Article 40, 19(1)(f), 31, 19(1)(e), even Article 29 and 22. So all this article is being violated because of 35A, but 35A is telling all these things will be outside judicial review. So all this happened because there was difference between permanent residents and non-permanent residents. So even the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, what is telling, it is unthinkable in constitutional democracy. So it had been going on for so many years. I don't know how it went like this. Because it's unthinkable. So he's telling how they did this because he's telling the government of India and the state government of Jammu and Kashmir only added Article 35A. So, but what the Chief Justice is telling, see that and all you don't tell us. The current government cannot distance itself from its predecessors. So he's telling, Mr. Solicitor, you're appearing for the government of India, you did all this. So he's telling, this government did this, that government did this, you don't tell all those things. Government of India did this, why did they do this like that, he's asking. So he's telling, in constitutional theory, the government of India is one perpetual entity. I will not see which party, that party like that, the Chief Justice is telling. So that is why the Solicitor General is telling, okay, that it is wrong only. That is why the center corrected itself on August 2019. When in August 2019, what happened? Article 370 was abrogated. And what was its creation? Article 35A came through Article 370. So that also went away. So he's telling, yeah, I am justifying this correction we made. So he's telling in 2019, this from 2019, this thing has gone. So the mistakes of past will not become a problem for the future. Like that, the Solicitor General is telling. So next what is telling, see who is supporting Article 370 and 35A. It is the two major political parties of Kashmir that is defending Article 370 and 35A. So now he's telling, but the people of Kashmir have now realized what they have lost all these years. What they have lost? Investment, tourism, etc. All these have gone. He's saying the hotels are being built in the Kashmir Valley. 16 lakh tourists have visited Jammu and Kashmir so far. All these things he's telling, but suddenly the Chief Justice is asking why the center had adhered to the. He's asking, had the central government adhered to the principle of federalism while abrogating Article 370 and abolishing Jammu and Kashmir as a full-fledged state. So he's telling, did you follow the principles of federalism when you were demolishing, when you were abrogating Article 370 and 35A? And you're telling, you've passed the order telling Jammu and Kashmir is no longer a full-fledged state also. So he's telling, the Chief Justice is telling, this is wrong because how did you do this abrogation? First, you dissolved Jammu and Kashmir state legislature, and then you proclaimed the president's rule under Article 356 on the ground of breakdown of constitutional machinery. So Chief Justice is telling, have you read the Article 3 of the Indian Constitution? They're telling in that it is mandatory for the president to control the state legislature before altering the status of the state. So, but he's telling the president's rule, which was proclaimed in December 2018, had done away with this. That is the provision in Article 3 that you have done away with. So, he's telling all these are wrong things. So, now the Solicitor General is telling, we did all those things, but the Parliament itself assumed the role of Jammu and Kashmir state legislature. So, now Chief Justice is telling, he's telling Parliament will ask somebody for the views on alteration of state, and the Parliament itself will become a legislature and answer for it and would enact a law for the state. So he's asking, is this right? Is this consistent with the federal structure like this? He's asking. But Solicitor General is telling, see, Jammu and Kashmir is a state only for all its purposes, but now we've just abrogated its full-fledged state status. He's telling it's a state only for all purposes because it has legislature. Everything is with the government only, but only the police powers are with the president. So he's telling these are the things that are going on with respect to 370 and 35A are concerned. Now let us move on to the next article. This topic is about population growth and what are the problems associated with it and what should India do. So what recent research study by Moody's Investor Service said, India's population growth is going to be there and it's going to raise its labor force availability. But what they're telling is that alone will not be enough to make the economy stronger or improve fiscal outcomes. Why? Why they are telling is because the quality of education in India is very bad. Like that they are telling. So what they are telling, better educational outcomes are necessary for countries like India, or else what will happen? They lose jobs. Why? Because there is digitalization, artificial intelligence, all these things are happening, and they're happening where in call center, BPO, and all these places. So if education is not improving, India will lose out on these areas. And what Moody's they're telling, India's current education outcome levels are equal to Pakistan and Bangladesh. So they're telling it's that bad. So what is the report title? Population growth alone will not drive credit benefits for emerging economies. So what they are telling, so the Moody's says they are expecting continued population growth in the region to support economic expansion. Because the working age populations will remain large compared with younger and older citizens. So that is there in India. So what they're telling, scale of labor, lot of labor is there, but will that alone be enough to drive materially stronger economic strength or better fiscal outcomes? They're telling no, that will not be enough. What is necessary? Strong education and quality of infrastructure. Those two things are necessary to reap benefits. So next they are telling Pakistan, Bangladesh and India. With these three countries and China and Southeast Asian countries. So between these two groupings, there is huge gap in the quality of education. So they're telling that is why there is labor force participation imbalance. So India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, third of the global population increase over the next 20 years, and 40% of the uptick in working age population are going to be from these countries only. Next, what they are telling, the difference in the proportion of the male and female population that has completed upper secondary education was pronounced in India and Bangladesh. So in India and Bangladesh only, the gap is huge between men and women who have completed an upper secondary education. So in other countries, it's more or less it has been balanced. But in India and Bangladesh, that is men are being sent to upper secondary education and women are not being sent to. So what is the summary? Basically, they're telling India's current education outcome levels are equal to that of Pakistan and Bangladesh. Considerable gap in the quality of education is there between India and China and Southeast Asian countries. Gender parity in education achievements most in India and Bangladesh. So these three things only they have focused more on in the study, and they are telling India's education outcomes are bad. They should focus on education and infrastructure development. So this is what this Moody's survey tells. Now let us move on to the next article. This article talks about why India needs comprehensive sexuality education. So yeah, you all know, right? The National Crime Record Bureau, 51,863 cases were reported under POCSO, and 3,348 or 64% of them were sexually assaulted. So what is this article talking about? So it's asking how do we prevent child abuse. The author says how do we prevent child abuse? Because he's telling the United Nations has come up with an effective approach which is called the comprehensive sexuality education. So in this is a curriculum based process of teaching and learning about, they target cognitive, emotional, physical and social aspects of sexuality. So what the author is telling is several state governments and certain sections of the society have adopted an ostrich-like approach. What is ostrich like? The ostrich thinks if it hides its face in the mud, then everything will go off. So like this is telling parents are behaving like that. So they're against sexual education. Why? Because they're telling it sexualizes children. And what they have done, they have diluted the existing programs, or some have even withdrawn them on the grounds that they violate Indian values. Why? Because traditional values are shaped by patriarchal and hierarchical social structures, and even mass media also propagates the same value, and all this negatively affects young adults of all genders. So we'll have to teach them about consent. What is consent? So in the context of POCSO cases, Madras, Delhi and Meghalaya High Courts have repeatedly, and even the Chief Justice of India have repeatedly told that there is frequent criminalization of consensual adolescent relationship. So they have asked the government that you reconsider the age of consent. So right now it is 18. They are telling it to bring it like to 16. So they're telling it is important to understand sexual consent because it's not just about violation and abuse. It is also necessary to have healthy relationship with others, right? So, but what the author is telling is Indian teenagers and young adults do not know what sexual consent means, because a study by dating app Tinder has showed that 64% of young Mumbaikars were hesitant to give consent, to ask for it, and to withdraw it when dating someone. So, this is worrying. So, the author is telling, while the concept of sexual consent is evolving through criminal jurisprudence, the term itself may have been borrowed from English or other Western languages. So, Sir Richard Bruton's translation of the Kama Sutra is a short discussion on consensual sexual pleasure, but in India, traditionally, discussions around the concept have been absent. So, what we should know is like non-English speaking population are also becoming substantial, right? So we need to create vocabulary in local languages like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and all. We should create vocabulary to discuss the concept of sexual consent and its nuances. So they is telling it is the need of the hour. So National Crime Record Bureau data, what it is showing, we should give comprehensive sexuality education not just to children but also parents and caregivers. So, and data has shown that both female and male children are victims of sexual abuse. So, what is well-being and dignity? United Nations Population Fund says the right of access to comprehensive sexuality education is grounded in fundamental human rights, means to empower young people to protect their health, well-being, and dignity. So, they're telling this sexuality education, you should start from the age of 5 itself, along with formal education. So they're telling what we should do. We should teach young children about their bodies, emotions, basic principles of consent, and how to deal with violence, bullying, abuse. Everything will be a part of this curriculum. So, what is World Health Organization telling? With comprehensive sexuality education, young people will be better informed of their rights and sexuality and will be more likely to engage in sexual activity later. So they're telling if you inform teenagers about all these things, they'll have their sexual activity later. But programs right now, what they're just telling don't have sex right now. That is the concept of abstinence. So you're telling follow abstinence. If you keep telling them, that is not effective. So if you teach them all these things, they are more likely to engage in sexual activity later. So they're telling comprehensive sexuality education is also very important in the matter of intimate partner violence. So to overcome that also, this is very important. So the comprehensive sexuality education, there are key intervention areas: sound monitoring and evaluation components, due consideration to inequality, gender norms, power and intimate relationships, and intimate partner violence. So you should focus on these things. So from August 10, 2023, the State Council of Education, Research and Training informed Kerala High Court that awareness about POSCO would be included in the curriculum from 24-25. So, relationship between sexual health, human rights are very complex, non-linear, and interrelated. So, the curriculum that we are going to give to children should be holistic, and it should not just talk about legal stuff. So, this is what this article is trying to tell. Now, let us move on to the next topic. This topic is about G20 and what India should do there. So, as you all know, G20 members emit the most of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, and they also produce the bulk of fossil fuels. But the thing is, most of them have also pledged to be net zero, which means they'll cut back on their emissions and fossil fuel use. So here the authors are telling that it's time the G20 comes together as a united group, and they should come up with their own collective ambition through collaboration, coordination, and competition. So why they are saying this? Because the G20 summit in New Delhi is going to be a crucial moment to show leadership ahead of the UN Secretary General's Climate Ambition Summit and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change COP28. So what has happened recently, G20 members have shown a degree of commitment to shift towards clean energy. So how do we say that? Because renewable energy sources provided 29% of the energy mix in 2021, which was an increase from 19% in 2010. So you all know even India has made significant steps, because in the last decade, India has become the world's third largest producer of renewable energy, and it also keeps setting its targets to continue the expansion of installed renewables to account for 50% of the energy production by 2030. So by 2030, 50% of energy production should come from renewables, right? So they are India is expanding renewable infrastructure for this. So if G20 has to do this, the government needs to create bigger shifts as demand increases and the world's carbon budget is shrinking faster than previously thought. So what G20 countries should do? First, at the national level and the local levels, G20 countries need to improve their governance process for just energy. Just means it should be based on justice. So poor people should not be affected. Next, what they are telling, government should establish clear governance structure to ensure that the transition process is inclusive. That is, poor people should be in it. They should not be left behind. And the results equitable, and avoid siloed. Siloed working means don't work in departments, work together. This includes clarifying responsibilities and mandates between ministries and across government levels with goal of having coherent delivery plans, because that only will attract investment. So this progress indicators should go beyond traditional ones. In traditional areas, what they're telling, we are creating net creation, diversity of manufacturing and regional economic growth to include metrics on the kinds of jobs created, who has access to them, and levels of broader community resilience and innovation. They should focus on these things. So, and next, the authors are telling they should depend on country context. So G20 countries should establish multi-ministerial task force or joint working groups between government and non-government actors to coordinate just energy transition efforts. So what has happened before? South Africa has developed a just transition framework that was led by the Presidential Climate Commission. So what they're telling us, other countries also, other G20 members also can learn from this approach. So what will this do? This will accelerate their own just energy transitions by developing concrete frameworks, roadmaps, or action plans. So next, they should decarbonize. How they should decarbonize? So Indian G20 presidency has acknowledged this. The G20 countries should see this transition as a way to diversify G20 member economies, because this way there will be long-term economic stability, livelihood, and public revenue streams. So, and next, what they're telling, international financial institutions also have a role to play, because they can align their investments and risk taking. Through that, they can give a lot of their money through credit and all those things, through renewable energy and grid infrastructure. And through this, they can support energy efficiency and very low carbon industrial technologies. So, for example, they are saying the global increase in demand for and production of green steel necessitates the immediate transition to low carbon steel production pathways. So, they are telling this way only it will work. So, next, this is important, significant, because the G20 countries present 90% of the global steel production and 80% of consumption. And they have a pivotal role in advancing global low-carbon steel production. So what they should do, they should set clear mandates for international financial institutions such as multilateral development banks, international climate finance. They can drive investments in green steel transitions within developing and emerging economies. So G20 should give collective commitment toward green public procurement. So they're telling this would also accelerate decarbonization and decarbonization of what sectors? Steel and cement, because they are called hard to abate. So hard to abate means they're telling in these areas decarbonization is not possible, but it's very difficult, but that also they can do. So, however, collaboration within and among G20 nations is necessary, because then only there will be effective and ambitious reform in public purchasing. So what should the government do? They should implement effective monitoring. They should create clear mandates for low carbon procurement. They should upskill procurement officers and set time-bound targets to harness the full potential of green public procurement. Next, there should be transparency. So G20 should take a lead in streamlining international efforts to achieve just energy transitions. So these efforts will be aided by radically improved transparency and accountability. So what they're telling it should be transparent. So what are the existing G20 energy transitions and sustainable finance working groups, just energy transitions, just energy transition partnerships? All those things should be there. So G20 should also encourage fossil fuel producing countries to provide current, comparable and reliable information about their plans and projects for oil, gas and coal production, and how these align with international as well as national climate goals. So there's a race to deploy clean energy for all, to decarbonize industry and to achieve just and inclusive transition cannot be run alone. So G20 should take a lead in these three action areas, and it should be a race that is won together, and it should not be something that is won at the expense of some countries and communities. So what should the outcome be? Just, affordable and inclusive energy transition pathways. So why should they do all this? Because in the past few months we have seen that there is devastating effects of climate change that is there for us to see. So they're telling there is simply no time to waste, and in G20 they should act on these things. Now let us go on to previous year questions. What is merchant discount rate? Sometimes they'll confuse you. That it seems like merchant discount rate means merchant is getting a discount, but it means the charge to a merchant by a bank for accepting payment from his customers through bank's debit cards. So the answer is C. He wrote biographies of Mazzini, Garibaldi, Shivaji and Sri Krishna. Stayed in America for some time and also elected to the Central Assembly. Who are they talking about? Lala Lajpat Rai. Aadhaar card can be used as a proof of citizenship or domicile. No. Once issued Aadhaar number cannot be deactivated or omitted by the issuing authority. This also no. Answer is neither 1 or 2. Rule of Law Index is by World Justice Project. That's all for today. If you liked it, you can subscribe, share and comment. You can also follow us on Instagram, Telegram and Facebook. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again tomorrow.